I needed a break. Life as a high school history teacher was exhausting, so I rented a cabin in the woods of Maple Hollow. I thought a week alone in nature would help me clear my head, but I was wrong. So very wrong. At first, things were peaceful. The silence felt good. I spent my days hiking, breathing in the fresh air. But that changed on my second night. Around midnight, I heard rustling outside. It didn't sound like an animal. The noises had a strange rhythm. I felt a chill creep down my spine. I peeked out the window and saw shadows moving among the trees. My heart raced. I told myself it was just my imagination. The next morning I tried to forget it. I went on a long hike to clear my head. But then I found something odd. A child's shoe by a big oak tree. It looked old. Dirt caked on it. I picked it up, feeling uneasy. What was I doing with it? I thought maybe some family had lost it. I shrugged it off and kept walking. But more strange things turned up. I found a rusted locket with nothing inside it. When I opened it, it had a musty smell. I couldn't shake the feeling that it belonged to someone. I looked around, but didn't see anyone. I shouldn't have kept pushing deeper into the woods, but I did. That evening, laughter echoed through the trees. It was distant but clear, like children playing. I remember searching for the source, hoping to find a family. But there was no one. The laughter stopped suddenly, and I felt cold. I sat on my cabin porch, looking into the dark woods, my hands shaking. As the days went by, more odd things appeared. I found strange carvings on trees. They looked like twisted faces staring back at me. I thought maybe I was going crazy. Was I losing it? I didn't know what to think anymore. On my last night, I heard footsteps circling my cabin. I convinced myself it had to be a deer, but deep down I felt like something was watching me. Then silence fell. I peeked through the window. My breath caught in my throat. I spotted a figure standing just beyond the tree line. It stood still, waiting. Questions raced in my mind, but I couldn't say any of them out loud. Then the laughter returned, faint and nearby. It felt wrong. I thought I was alone. Who were they? Why were they in these woods? I was sure I was losing my mind. I just wanted peace, but all I had were unsettling discoveries and whispers on the wind. I left the woods behind, but they never left me. I wish I had never gone. I still wonder what I disturbed there and what watches from the shadows. Drove away from Maple Hollow as fast as I could. The trees blurred past, large and ominous. I could still hear faint echoes of laughter in my mind, like a twisted memory I couldn't shake off. Each time I replayed those final moments at the cabin, my heart raced. What had I stumbled into? Back home, things felt too quiet. My apartment was too still, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos I'd taken during my hike. I had hoped to capture peaceful scenes, but one image caught me off guard. It was a picture of those strange carvings on the trees, twisted faces and unsettling expressions frozen in time. I zoomed in. That was when I noticed something else, something lurking in the background. A shadow darker than the surrounding woods hovered on the edge of the frame. My skin crawled. I spent days trying to ignore it all, but every noise made me jump. My friends noticed too. They tried to draw me in with their chatter, but I couldn't escape the weight of what I had seen. They suggested hiking trips, but the thought alone sent chills down my spine. On a Friday night, unable to sleep, I decided to call the local ranger station. If anyone could provide answers, it would be them. Maybe there were reports of strange occurrences or missing children. Anything that could explain what I had felt. I dialed the number, fingers trembling. When the ranger picked up, I hesitated. How could I even begin to explain what had happened? "Hello?" the ranger said again, his voice crackling through the line. I took a deep breath. "I was in Maple Hollow last week, and I found some odd things near the cabin. Strange noises, shadowy figures." He hesitated. "Strange happens out there," he said finally. "You're not the first to report things. If you see something, you should just leave." "Leave? What do you mean?" He sighed heavily. "Just trust your instincts. The woods, well, they hold things best left undisturbed." The line went dead. I sat there with a knot tightening in my stomach. What was left undisturbed? What could possibly be waiting? The next day, I went for a walk to clear my head. I ended up at a nearby park, but even the chirping of birds felt too loud. As I rounded a corner, I spotted something on the ground. It was a locket, just like the one I had found in the woods. My breath caught in my throat. I bent down and opened it. Inside was nothing, just a dark void. I looked around, feeling the hair on my neck stand up. I quickly pocketed it, already knowing I couldn't stand to see it lying there. Someone had lost it. Or had it been left for me? I left the park feeling uneasy. That evening, I decided it was time to go back to Maple Hollow. Something compelled me to search for answers, even if my instincts screamed otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of my apartment felt like footsteps following me. I pulled on my coat and grabbed the locket. I needed to know. But as I opened the door to leave, I stopped short. I froze. Someone was standing in the hallway. I squinted through the dim light of the hallway, trying to make sense of the figure in front of me. It was a woman, her frame slight but somehow imposing. The shadows danced around her, making it hard to see her face clearly. My heart raced as I instinctively took a step back, unsure of her intentions. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze locked onto mine as if sizing me up. The silence stretched, and in those brief moments, I felt the air grow heavy. I wanted to turn back and slam the door shut, but something about her drew me in. She finally spoke in a voice soft as a breeze, though there was an undercurrent of urgency in her words. "It's not safe for you to be here," she said. "You need to leave. Now." Panic surged within me. "Leave? You mean the apartment, or—" "Maple Hollow," she interrupted. "You don't understand. They want you back." The chill creeping down my spine intensified as her words echoed in my mind. "They want you back?" I exchanged uneasy glances with her. I needed answers, but fear held me in place. Before I could respond, she stepped closer, and the light caught her face just enough for me to see the haunted look in her eyes. I noticed a faded scar running down her cheek, like a reminder of something dark. "What do you know about it?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. "I used to live near there. Something in those woods. It calls to you. You think you're safe now, but it won't let you go." For a moment, I forgot about everything. The locket, the ranger's warning, the laughter that echoed in my mind. I was lost in her gaze, suddenly feeling her fear. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling the weight of her warning shut down my instincts to turn back to the cabin. "You must uncover what they've taken," she urged, her voice urgent. "You can only stop it if you confront what you found." Confront. The word echoed in my head, igniting a mixture of dread and determination. I glanced at the door, the darkness beyond it reminiscent of my haunted memories. "Please, you have to trust me," she said, stepping closer, her voice softer now yet saturated with warning. "I can't keep you safe, but you must go back, not to the cabin, but to the woods. Find what you lost." Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered, and an uncomfortable energy filled the space. I felt my instincts screaming at me to run, yet I was frozen in place, anchored by her intensity. "Find it before it finds you," she said sharply. Before I could respond, she turned and hurried down the hallway, her form swallowed by darkness. I stood there, pulse quickened, frantically trying to process what had just happened. I took a deep breath and gripped the locket in my pocket. I had to confront my fears. I had to go back. Just then I heard a whisper echoing through the hallway, a faint voice calling my name, dragging me back to Maple Hollow once more. I took a hesitant step back into the hallway, my heart pounding in rhythm with the whisper. The air felt charged, as if something unseen was stalking me. I was barely aware of my surroundings now, the dim light and peeling wallpaper fading into nothing as memories clawed their way to the surface. Maple Hollow. The name swirled in my mind, tangled with those echoes of laughter, and the sensation of something lurking just beyond reach. Taking a deep breath, I made my way back to my car. The woods were calling me, and deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore them. Driving down the narrow, winding road, I fought the urge to turn back. Each bend brought more unease, as if the trees themselves were watching me. I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the cool metal of the locket. It felt heavier now, charged with something I couldn't quite identify. When I finally parked at the edge of the woods, I hesitated. Memories of running through there as a child collided with the darkness threading through my mind. I stepped out of the car, shivers coursing through me as a gust of wind whispered through the trees. I was alone. Or was I? I moved cautiously along the familiar trail, memories fluttering around me like fallen leaves. But the deeper I went, the more that sense of being watched returned. Shadows flitted between the trunks. I could feel them, lurking, waiting. And there was something else, a faint sound, laughter mingled with something darker tilting my stomach. Then I saw it. A small clearing materialized through the trees, and in the center stood a gnarled oak tree, twisted and ancient. It wasn't just any tree. I recognized it from my childhood. I had carved my initials into its bark, something I had long forgotten. Staring at the tree sent tremors of recognition through my bones. That was where everything had changed. That day in Maple Hollow, the laughter had morphed. Something had called me deeper into the woods, deeper into my own fear. As I approached the tree, memories seemed to rush back. I could almost hear my own voice entangled in that laughter, sweet and innocent. But the laughter transformed. It sped up, became frantic and high-pitched, until it twisted into something sinister. "Get out!" I yelled, my own voice sounding alien in the stillness. But the echoes returned, now sharper, mocking me. "Get out!" In a panicked rush, I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over roots. That's when I saw it. A glint of metal buried at the base of the tree. Hesitant, I knelt down, brushing away dirt and leaves. My breath caught in my throat. It was a small key, rusted but unmistakable. What was it for? In that moment, the woods felt alive. The laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence wrapping around me like fog. I felt trapped, the walls of the forest closing in. Before I could grasp what I had just discovered, the wind whipped back violently, causing me to stand up abruptly. And that's when I heard it. A low growl, deep and reverberating, echoing from the shadows behind the trees. Someone, or something, was watching me. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The growl sent chills racing down my spine. It was primal, threatening, and it reminded me of a deep-seated fear I couldn't name. I wanted to run, to escape, but something rooted me to the spot. The air crackled with tension, and as shadows danced in my peripheral vision, curiosity nagged at my instincts. I tightened my grip on the key and scanned the area, my heart hammering furiously against my ribcage. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. Silence answered. With an effort, I forced myself to take a step closer to the oak, the only familiar thing in this unsettling place. My hand trembled as I reached towards the rough bark where I once carved my initials. Memories flooded me. Each laugh, each game. But the darkness had twisted those memories. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suddenly the growl came again, closer this time. I turned quickly, scanning the underbrush for movement, but there was nothing, just the trees, watching me with their ancient eyes. That's when I remembered something. My grandfather used to tell stories of creatures that roamed these woods at night, myths told to keep kids close to home. I always thought they were just tales to scare us. What if they weren't? Then a rustle. The sound was distinct and deliberate. My breath quickened as I jerked my head toward the noise. "Who's there?" I shouted, hoping to sound brave, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. No response came. I needed to leave. Yet the key in my pocket burned against my skin, a reminder that I had no answers. I couldn't just walk away. I had to know what it opened. I dashed towards the edge of the clearing, glancing over my shoulder often, half expecting to see something, or someone, pursuing me. I stumbled back onto the trail, feeling the gnawing urge to escape, yet drawn back by the unseen force of the woods. Just as I reached the tree line, I spotted something half buried in the underbrush. A faded photograph. Heart racing, I bent down to retrieve it, brushing off dirt. The image was startlingly clear despite the years. There were children laughing, playing in front of the oak tree. But as I examined it more closely, I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. One of the children looked just like me. Panic surged as I flipped it over, desperate for any clue. On the back, in messy handwriting, someone had scrawled, "We're not alone anymore." The words felt suffocating. I dropped the photograph, pulse racing, and turned to run. But before I could take a step, a branch snapped behind me. I spun around, heart pounding in my ears. The shadows shifted closer, and I realized I wasn't just hearing things. I wasn't alone. Someone, or something, was following me. I bolted, charging down the trail, fear propelling me forward. If I didn't find a way out soon, I would be lost in both the woods and the truth I was terrified to face. I didn't stop running. The sounds of the forest blared around me, each rustle and snap echoing in my mind like a drum. I needed to focus, but panic clawed at my thoughts, tangling them into a frantic mess. Where was the trail? Everything looked the same, dark and foreboding. I pushed through branches that snagged at my clothes and limbs. My breath came in sharp, quick bursts, and I felt myself growing more disoriented with each step. That growl lingered in my ears, a constant reminder that I was not alone. My heart raced as I fought the urge to scream. I couldn't let fear take over. In that moment of chaos, something on the ground caught my eye. It was a shiny object half buried under a layer of leaves. I skidded to a halt and dropped to my knees, fingers trembling as I brushed away the debris. It was a small silver locket. I opened it with shaky hands, revealing 2 small pictures inside. Each was worn, but one looked familiar. It was the same child from the photograph. My doppelganger, but older. I slammed the locket shut, my stomach twisting. I couldn't deal with this. I had to keep moving. As I got back to my feet, the growl sounded again, closer this time, reverberating through the trees like a warning. I turned, adrenaline firing through my veins, and ran blindly into the underbrush. Before I could register my surroundings, I broke through the tree line and stumbled into a small glade. It was eerily quiet. The anomaly of silence made my skin crawl. The trees encircled the clearing as if keeping secrets, shadows crouching low. There, at the center, stood a twisted and gnarled stump, unnaturally large for the others around. It drew me in, a strange compulsion anchoring my feet to the ground. Suddenly I noticed something etched into the stump. I stepped closer, squinting in the dim light. It was a series of symbols, lines and shapes, almost like a language. As I traced a finger over the carvings, a rush of nausea hit me. The symbols resonated with something in my memory, but felt just out of reach. As I read the markings, my breath caught. One of the symbols looked like the key in my pocket. The connection was unmistakable, and I felt the key's weight pull me back. I had to find out what it opened. But why here? Why now? Then from the edge of the trees a figure emerged. My heart leaped into my throat and I stumbled back, mouth dry. It was a girl, her face shadowed, but the resemblance was unmistakable. She looked like me, only different. There was something wild in her eyes, something that suggested she knew this place, and the secrets it held. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the vacuum of silence. A chill traced my spine. I wanted to respond, to ask questions, but before I could gather the courage, she pointed away from the clearing. "They're coming. You need to go." In that moment, I felt the weight of urgency settle in my chest. I was torn, caught between fear and an instinct to trust her. Before I could make a choice, shadows shifted again, and the growl rang out once more, closer, menacing. I turned and ran, but her words lingered in my mind. Who was she, and what was coming for us? My feet pounded against the ground as I sprinted out of the glade. The trees blurred past in a rush of shadows and flickering shapes, but I kept my eyes focused ahead. The growling behind me was no longer just a sound. It had become a visceral threat, pushing me faster. Every instinct screamed at me to escape, but I didn't know where I was headed. Just as fear threatened to take control, I spotted a narrow path cutting through the underbrush. It was barely visible, yet my gut urged me to take it. Branches snagged at my arms, and I ducked beneath low limbs, moving deeper into the woods. My breath came in gasps, each one heavier than the last. The growl faded temporarily, but I could feel its presence creeping on my heels. Suddenly I tripped over a root and crashed to the ground. Pain shot through my ankle, but I didn't have time to assess it. I scrambled to my feet and winced as I put weight on it. Fear propelled me forward again. Every step was a battle, but I had to keep moving. Ahead I saw a flicker of light. My heart raced with hope. Maybe it was a campsite or someone who could help. I quickened my pace, practically lunging towards the brightness, relief swelling in my chest. But as I got closer, reality twisted. The light came from an old lantern swaying empty on a wooden table in another clearing. The air felt thick, heavy with tension, and I instinctively looked around. There was no sign of anyone, but something about the setup seemed so familiar. It looked like the scene from The Locket, only instead of innocence, a sense of dread hung in the air. On the table beside the lantern was a small notebook. Torn at the edges, its pages were yellowed and crinkled with time. I reached for it, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Flipping it open sent shivers down my spine. The first page contained haunting sketches, figures, some with familiar features, and one that particularly caught my attention. It looked like the girl from the glade, but her expression was twisted with anguish. The next pages showed more drawings, sketches of strange symbols, perhaps the ones on the stump. My fingers traced the lines, a thread of recognition pulling me closer. Why was this here? I murmured. The growls returned, and I could sense the threat looming, growing nearer. Anxiety surged as I scanned the area, the dark trees standing like sentinels around me. Then I found more writing at the end of the notebook. Someone had scrawled a warning. "They come for what you hide. Do not trust the shadows." The words sent chills racing down my spine. Who was this? And what were they hiding? Before I could contemplate my next move, the growl erupted louder, followed by the sounds of something crashing through the brush. I barely had time to think before I dashed past the table, the notebook clutched tightly in my hand. I needed to find safety, to understand this sinking connection, and fast. What was I hoping to unlock with the key? And why did everything feel so intertwined? Just then, I stumbled into another clearing, but this one was different. The air became electric and I froze, breath hitching. That's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge. It stared at me, its expression unreadable. Panic surged again, the weight of fear overwhelming. It wasn't her, but it was someone else entirely. They beckoned. I hesitated, a mix of curiosity and dread swirling inside me. I was out of options, and whatever was in the shadows was closing in. Would this stranger be my salvation or my doom? My feet felt like lead, but I didn't dare stop. The figure continued to beckon, their hand fluid and welcoming, yet I sensed danger in that gesture. I took a cautious step forward, ready to turn and run at the first sign of trouble. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaky. The words hung in the air, swallowed by the trees that loomed around us. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face half-draped in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," they said, their voice low and steady. "It's not safe." That was the last thing I wanted to hear. "I know," I replied, my heart racing. "I'm trying to escape something." "What is out there?" They hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their features. "You don't want to know," they finally said. "But you have to listen. We don't have time." The growl returned, louder and filled with a venomous rage. I felt the tremors in the ground beneath my feet, a warning that something was closing in fast. "Come on," the figure urged, their tone sharp and urgent. They turned and began to dart into the trees, and without another thought, I followed. We moved quickly, weaving through the thick underbrush. My ankle throbbed with each step, but the adrenaline pushed me forward. "What's your name?" I shouted, trying to keep pace, but the figure remained silent, glancing back occasionally. Finally, we broke into another clearing, this one shrouded in near total darkness. Only the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi illuminated the edges. "Wait here," the figure said sharply and darted behind a large tree. I could see them frantically searching through the leaves and undergrowth. As I stood there, breathing hard, a chilling realization washed over me. The growl was getting closer. With each low rumble, the dark woods seemed to pulse. I climbed against the trunk of a tree, hoping it would hide me. My chest tightened. Then I heard it. A voice whispered from the shadows, soft and luring. "You can't hide from what you are." I felt the words claw at my mind, igniting fears I didn't fully understand. I pressed my back against the bark, trying to block it out. What did it mean? I gripped the notebook tightly, as if it could protect me. Just then the figure re-emerged, clutching tree branches in their hands. "We need to move," they shouted, urgency filling their eyes. They threw a handful of leaves onto the ground and, to my shock, the foliage began to shimmer and dance. "What is happening?" I gasped. "It's a distraction," they said quickly. "If they can't find us, we might have time to escape." Before I could process their words, the growling transformed into a roar, shaking the very leaves overhead. The figure grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the shimmering leaves. Now, without hesitation, I plunged into the sea of radiant colors, feeling a jolt of energy as I stepped through. Everything around me flickered, distorting my vision. I felt gravity shift, and suddenly, we were no longer in the clearing. Where were we? I looked around, dizzy and disoriented. The woods were gone, replaced by thick mist swirling around us. I turned to the figure, panic rising in my chest. "Where did you take us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Somewhere safe," they replied, glancing back into the thick fog. But not for long. The shadows were still there, lurking. I could feel them, and something told me they were just waiting for a chance to strike. The mist enveloped us, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. I could feel the weight of uncertainty settle over me. "What do you mean, not for long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure turned to me, their eyes wide with intensity. "They know where we are now. They follow the trail of magic." I took a step back, trying to process their words. Magic? I had never believed in anything like that. My thoughts were interrupted by an unsettling rustling behind us. I spun around, but all I could see was the swirling fog. "Focus," the figure said, shaking my shoulders lightly. "Listen, you need to trust me. We have to find the remnant." "The what?" I asked. It sounded like they were speaking a different language. "The remnant." They gestured with urgency. "It's a safe harbor, a shield against them, but we're running out of time." The growl I heard earlier echoed faintly in the distance, sending a chill down my spine. What do I have to do? "Just follow me, stay close, and don't look away." They began to move deeper into the fog, and I hardly had time to react before I followed. Our pace quickened, the sound of our hurried footsteps muffled by the thicket of mist. Suddenly, the fog began to clear slightly ahead. Shapes emerged, old stones, crumbling and covered in moss. There was an intricate design etched into one of the larger rocks, spirals and figures that pulsed faintly, almost as if they were alive. "Is that it?" I asked, my heart racing with a mix of hope and dread. "Yes," they exclaimed. "We need to touch it to activate the shield." I approached the stone with caution. The markings looked so foreign, but they emanated a warmth that beckoned me closer. But just as I reached out, the growls grew louder, mixed with guttural voices that whispered in the wind. "You've come to hide, but you cannot escape." Panic flooded my mind. "Do we have time?" "More than we think, but we can't waste it." The figure grabbed my wrist again, pulling me toward the stone. "Now, touch it." I placed my hand on the smooth surface, the chill and warmth swirling together. It felt surprisingly comforting. As I pressed down, a bright light erupted from the stone, illuminating the surrounding area like dawn breaking through the clouds. In that moment, I heard a scream, a high-pitched cry that made my skin crawl. Shadows danced at the edges of our newfound light, darting back as if scorched. The figure and I stood within the glow, breathless. "That's not just a shield," I whispered, realization dawning on me. It's also a beacon. Yes, and we just rang the alarm for all to hear. Their voice was tense, and suddenly the shadows inched closer. My heart dropped. I had hoped this discovery would protect us, but now it felt like a trap. Just as I looked back at the stone, I noticed something breaking through the mist, something dark and enormous. Then everything shifted. Before I could even move, the ground beneath us trembled violently. My knees buckled and I hit the ground hard. The figure released my wrist, stumbling back as the shadow loomed closer, a monstrous silhouette tearing through the mist like a predator hunting its prey. The air vibrated with its growl, a deep, resonating sound that felt alive and hungry. "Run!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet as panic drove my legs forward. I darted to the side, desperate to escape not only the creature but also the panic flooding my mind. I could hear the figure following close behind, mirroring my fear. We could be anywhere, but this sanctuary suddenly felt like a trap. The light from the stone pulsed against the darkness, illuminating twisted roots and gnarled branches that seemed to reach for us, as if the forest itself wanted to reclaim what we had stumbled upon. The roars echoed again, increasing in intensity. Every instinct screamed for me to find safety, but I kept running, pushing through an array of shapes that blurred into release of twisting tendrils of darkness. "Over here." The figure gestured to a cluster of rocks off to the left, and I lunged in their direction, prayer on my lips and adrenaline charging through me. I ducked behind a larger boulder, my gasping breath barely a whisper above the chaos. The figure joined me, panting, eyes wide with fear. "It's coming," I breathed, pressing my back against the cold stone. "What do? We need to disrupt its connection to this realm before it fully manifests," they replied, glancing back toward the light. "The remnant can shield us, but it won't hold forever." What does that even mean? My frustration mingled with terror, but I didn't have time to wait for answers. The growl had morphed into howls. It was testing the edges of our light. "Remember the markings?" They pointed toward the glowing stone. "They connect to whatever it is out there. The more light we can channel, the weaker its hold becomes." I shot them a look, still trying to process everything. "So we just, what, channel light? Into what?" "Into the darkness." They raised their hands, fingers splayed, welcoming energy like a conductor before an orchestra. "Help me." Simultaneously, we rose from behind the boulder, both thrusting our hands toward the stone. I felt warmth radiate through my core, a light igniting within me. Visions of the woods whirled, of laughter, of that lingering gaze of the girl from the glade. Memories intertwined, flooding my being, unlocking something deep. The stone shimmered. Patterns from the surrounding symbols began to glow brighter, weaving thick threads of energy through the fog. Shaking but resolute, I closed my eyes, leaning into that light, trusting it. The darkness shrank away, temporarily held at bay, but I could feel the encroachment, could feel the growl vibrating through my bones. "I can see it," I gasped, feeling both terrified and liberated. It's bending under the light. We can weaken it." "Keep going," they urged, and we drove our focus toward the stone's warm pulse, blending our energy. As we did, I heard the howls shift into fury. The shadows clawed at the edges of the light, darkness merging with flashes like wisps of smoke. But the anger in the distance grew, chaotic and powerful. I opened my eyes just in time to see figures forming from the gloom. They flickered with an ethereal glow, resembling the faces I had seen in the trees, faces that twisted with anguish. Had they been pulled into this realm? Were they me? "What are they?" I cried, gripping tighter onto this inexplicable connection and praying it held. "The remnants, fragments of those lost," the figure said, voice breaking slightly. "We need to disperse them. It's the only way to free yourself." Desperation ignited within me. But how? "Draw them to the light. Remember the laughter. Remember the freedom." With frantic empathy, I focused on the light expanding, envisioning the laughter and wonder of childhood, the warmth of innocent joy, a yearning that felt closer than mere memory. I beckoned the faces in the darkness with this essence, the laughter echoing again and again. "Together!" I shouted, my voice resonating through the forest. The shadows faltered, then surged toward us, swirling against the light. I could feel the chaos clashing like a storm, but it didn't feel threatening anymore. A distinct voice emerged from the murk. A chorus of children's laughter mingled with their cries. The fusion pushed against the darkness, pulling me in painfully close. "Now!" I shouted, squeezing my eyes shut. "Release them!" A shattering burst erupted, blinding every shadow in the embrace of brilliant light. Each flicker of darkness spun off into the mist until the resonance erupted in a cascade of flickering energy. And then, silence descended. Gasping, we stepped back. The fugue lifted slightly and markings on the stone dimmed. The forest fell quiet, shadows retreating as morning light crept through the density. I exhaled, the release feeling miraculous but tenuous. As the last shadows disappeared, I felt my heart race again, sanity gripped in threads of vulnerability. "We did it," I whispered, though questions swirled in my mind. But just as I began to breathe relief, the figure looked at me with a sudden intensity. "It's not over. They may find you again." "Who?" I asked, fear returning like a haunting tune. "The woods don't forget. You've disturbed something ancient. Someone else might come next," they replied, pulling back as uncertainty rolled in. The weight of their gaze pierced through me, tethering my resolve. I would never escape the woods entirely. That darkness still existed, lurking in a fragile dawn. "I'll be ready," I murmured, though even I felt the tremor of doubt. As I turned back to the path we had forged, the wind whispered through the trees, a lingering reminder of what had been lost, and what remained unsaid. And somewhere deep within the woods, shadows stirred.